All right, at 7:30, I think we've got the 4 counselors we're going to have today. So let's get started. If you would go ahead and join me, calling this meeting to order and rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First up on the agenda for today is the approval of the memorandum of the October 2nd, 2023 regular meeting of this body. A copy has been posted. Are there any questions from the council?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Garrett, second by Councilor Melton. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Next up is the memoranda of the October 2nd, 2023 regular town council meeting. Any questions?
Did we just do that? We're on the
It's
claims.
listed twice. Okay. Next item is the approval of the October 23rd, 2003 claims. Any questions from council?
I do have a couple questions, please.
Okay.
The first one is just, I see a duplicate on page 9. And I'm just curious if it's a duplicate. It's the same charge, $331.85. It has Amanda Vila as the name on it. Claim 3665. I don't know if you have that pulled up. I just want to make it clear that it's documented twice on page 9. I don't know if one of them needs to go away, one of them needs to stay. It's only $331.85, but it is duplicate on page 9. Ace Party Rental.
Okay. Yeah, your page is different from my page. Must be because I'm not seeing it on that. Yes. Oh, between two different. Okay, that's the reason why it was split. The payment was split
So
between.
when a payment's split, do we document it the same way, same number, same everything?
Yes.
Or should it be 2 claims because it's 2 payments?
No, the only thing that differentiates is the appropriation number that it comes out of. One check will cut for the entire amount, but there'll be line items for the actual appropriation number that it
So
comes
will
out
we
of.
see a check number in the future? Just, I don't know, it's
Yeah, yeah, there won't be a check number until we cut the check. We had to have it approved first.
okay. So it's the same exact price. It's just some it's split in half.
It was split, yes.
Okay, awesome. And then while you're here, I see there's some retainers on here. And this is just confusing to me. So if there's a reason for it, let me know. But I believe it's Witzik and Nooning. It's 4061. I don't have the page number on this one. I apologize. 4061 and 3942 are the claim numbers. And they're both for $15,000. They're likely the monthly retainers.
Yeah, I believe one of them was the descriptions. It was 2 different months.
Yeah. So do we normally pay in advance on these, or why would we not approve November's retainer in November, I guess, like at the November meeting?
Well, technically, they should be getting it by the first part of November, but it just all depends on when we get the invoice and get it submitted.
Okay, so it's based on the invoice. That's great.
Yes.
So that helps me because the first one, the November retainer is dated 10/16, and then the October retainer is dated 10/23, which
It would have been when we got the invoice in.
which is
so-
in reverse, which just didn't make sense. Okay, that's all I had.
Any other questions? You have a motion?
Motion to approve claims.
Second.
Motion to approve by Councilor Melton, second by Councilor Trailer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Amy, do we have any requests to speak on an agenda item today?
No, we do not.
Next, Mayor Administration update. I believe Deputy Mayor Patel is here. Morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me out. A couple of things, I think I have 4 things to cover real quick. Since our last meeting, we had a trail opening of the joining of Whitestown and Zionsville on the Big 4 Trail. It was a great event, had surprisingly about 45 people out there for that event. And it was a good opportunity. John Stair made a great point that our communities need to work a little closer together and try and join a better, enjoy a better relationship. So next thing on that was we went to the Carpenter Nature Preserve and had a dedication. At that event, Nancy and Jim Carpenter were awarded Sagamore to the Wabash, which is the highest award that a Hoosier can have bestowed upon them by the governor. It was another great event. We had about 115 people out there for that event. Counselors, some state reps, and various other local dignitaries. Moving on, I want to talk about the enrichment grants and what it says about us when we use these enrichment grants and how they have come to be used. Joe, do you have slides for me? I'll keep moving. The enrichment grant is funded by food and beverage taxes, which were enacted in, I think it was 2005, when the Lucas Oil Stadium was started. The governor let locals enact an additional 1% tax on food and beverage in their local communities, and then they can use that money for what they see fit. In that time, we've had, I believe there are 4 different iterations of the enrichment grant, or the food and beverage, the uses of the food and beverage taxes. In that, they have gone from a very strict, narrow reading to what we consider a wider reading of understanding that you can use these funds to enhance the community as the enrichment committee sees fit and the council agrees with. Those are the 2 ways that we move through the enrichment grants and why they're attractive, as opposed to what we had in previous administrations. It came down to an unqualified, what we would call an unqualified program, where there wasn't a follow-up, there wasn't a committee to decide what projects came forward to the town council. In that beginning of the enrichment grant process, town council was appointing members to that enrichment committee. And instead of continuing at that, I think it was this year that you decided to remove your members from the enrichment committee and decided to have the whole council as a whole review the enrichment grants. Still in the process, where there's a two-factor process of getting these enrichment grants to the people that need them. So in talking about that, the reason why I talk about that is to lead into my last subject in talking about the ARPA ordinance. During the budget agreements, Councilor Garrett and I went through many conversations and many iterations of the budget. Sometimes not even presented to the other council members. But in that process, we went from using the entire budget deficit paid down with ARPA funds to a $2.7 million pay down with ARPA funds. Part of that conversation that we had was discussing the ability to, in fact, engage all of those funds, the $4.8 million funds, before the end of the deadline. So we came to an agreement where we would have $2.7 million worth of direct spends, and those include $720,000 for street equipment, $1.1 million worth of street infrastructure, $30,000 for the facilities and maintenance repairs to the town hall, that's striping the parking lot, $150,000 for non-departmental construction contractual services, which is a transportation study, $366,000 in an amount to be paid towards SCBA equipment or self-contained breathing apparatus for the fire department, which is aging out of their current equipment. $300,000 estimate for a comprehensive plan for a total of $2,716,000. When we received the ordinance, or prior to the ordinance coming to us, the ARPA ordinance that you have in front of you now, we had a couple of back and forth emails between Councilor Garrett and myself and council, and discussed giving grants to the Chamber of Commerce to the tune of $200,000, Z-Works $200,000, a $10,000 downtown restroom study for the Chamber of Commerce, and $100,000 for the Zionsville Cultural District Summer Concert Series. In talking about that, I sent an email to Councilor Garrett and President Plunkett asking them to not include these particular spends within the ARPA spend. Our reasoning, number one, is these should go through the enrichment grant and be pulled directly out of the food and beverage fund, just like these organizations have always been funded. They should go through the enrichment grant process like any other nonprofit. If there's an ask that's larger than normal, that's when we can get together with the council and make a decision if that's something that we want to do. But using ARPA funds, which are in fact federal dollars, you put an onus on each one of these nonprofits to acquire, spend, and report all those dollars the same way that we do when we spend federal dollars. All right, if they're ready for that, that's fine. I think it's an opportunity to create a problem for these nonprofits. To be clear, the administration is not advocating that these nonprofits get money from the town. We agree It's spreading that money out that we have. There's over $1.1 million in the food and beverage fund right now. So any ask that the council would have could come directly from there. But using federal dollars for this is a completely different animal. And I'll ask Tim Berry possibly to come up and give me a few notes on that. As far as the reporting requirements have not changed since ARPA came out. Tim, did you have anything to add to that?
Thanks. Tim Berry with Crow, financial advisor to the town. You currently have assigned your ARPA dollars as lost revenue. And that is to provide government services and to be used for the provision of government services. As a result, if you were to provide those dollars to a nonprofit, it would change the way that Cindy then reports those dollars to the federal government in the annual allocation. It would require the units or the entities to report on their spend annually to Cindy, and then Cindy would upload that information to Treasury as a provision for those dollars.
May I ask a question on that?
Please. Yeah.
Yeah, so a statement was just made that it would require, for example, the chamber to comply with all the federal ARPA reporting, and that is not accurate.
It would
So
depend upon, yeah,
it's not,
you are
but
correct.
that is not accurate. That's an inaccurate statement. So I just want the council to know that. So what the requirement is, for example, I'm looking at the chamber, so I'm picking on you, could pick on someone else in the audience. And it requires the chamber to report to the town
Correct.
that they are spending the money for the purpose in which the town gave them the funds, and they cannot spend it for any other purpose. The town then, in the provision of government reduction or reduction in spending for government purposes, basically that under the federal rule that came out to implement the ARPA funding states that we can use it for any governmental purpose of the town. And it's simply a reporting mechanism that goes back to the state that said we chose to spend the dollars in this way, and that the grantee is spending the dollars in this way. So
It's actually a report that goes back to the federal government.
right, but it
not
goes through the state of Indiana, and then the state of Indiana then,
No, the town would actually report directly to the federal government how that spend is.
but the state is also part of that process. State Board of Accounts is monitoring that and
That's
others
correct.
to make sure that there's compliance with the requirements. So it isn't imposing all the federal rules and restrictions of receiving federal funds. It's simply these folks are reporting to us and we're reporting back. Is that correct, Tim?
So the town is required to report to the federal
Right.
government, to Treasury annually, because your allocation was less than $10 million. So you report on an annual basis. And that reporting is directly to the federal government. Depending upon the federal dollars that that entity has received, it would depend upon, it could change that threshold in which how they would have to report those dollars and how they would have to spend the reporting of those
Right.
dollars.
So it would just require them to do a compliance report back to us that the spend is in compliance. And so, I mean, many of the neighboring communities, whether it's Fishers or others, have used the funding for very similar projects. So they've
It does
used it
change the
for
way, yes.
projects like Z-Works, it's their equivalent, Launch or whatever it's called, Launch Fishers or whatever the name is over there. So I just don't want there to be some confusion here that we're
We've worked-
imposing these like unnecessary regulatory burdens on the grantees. And to me, it is an appropriate use of funding. So, and we've seen many other communities across the state of Indiana use this for the same funding. Bloomington, for example, also used, I think, some of their ARPA funding in this same way.
Typically, when they did that and when communities did that, and we worked with many communities across the state in assisting them with that, if they were to provide nonprofits within the community grants Those typically were grants that entities within the community would apply for. They would be scored and then they would be awarded those grants accordingly.
Yeah, we've worked with a lot of communities as well. And I think that, to me, I think what we're talking about is whether or not this is appropriate use of ARPA funding and less about the process, because there's nothing in the federal regulations that require communities to go through those extra steps in terms of how they want to grant the dollars out. So
there certainly are not requirements that do that. That's correct.
Yeah.
But it does change how Cindy will report. So instead of just internal expenditures appropriated through the town, it will be and will include third-party subrecipient reporting from the entities.
yeah, and that I agree.
That is correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was clear because I was looking at the faces of the chamber folks and I didn't want to alarm them. So.
Following that, we would. Next slide, Joe. In offering this to you, we believe that picking 3 individual entities it lacks transparency. We don't know how these 3 entities were chosen by you 7 council members because it was never decided at a meeting. I don't believe we had a discussion on it. Am I correct there?
No, there actually was public discussion. All of these organizations have presented publicly to the council on
Heather,
more than one occasion.
can I let Debbie
Oh,
Kell
please, yes.
finish and then we'll move on down the agenda.
No comment or
This is your time, please.
okay. While we have an enrichment grant process that sits in front of members of the town that are not affiliated with the town, and then those decisions made in the enrichment committee process are then sent to the council for their own discussion and decision on whether or not they should be funded. This circumvents that completely. It gives special dispensation to 3 organizations that are important to the community, that the community does not need to look at and think, how did they get this done? And I think that's an error on our part to put them in that position. And I think that it should be reconsidered from the administration point. We're glad to sit down and discuss an additional for this year to come out of the food and beverage. If you care to fund them that way, but choosing this path is unacceptable in our opinion. Joe. Next slide, Joe. In closing, we are hopeful that you will reconsider funding these with ARPA funds and that we can come to an agreement on the agreed upon spending plan for governmental operations. Any questions?
I have a single question. You have intermingled I and we through most of this presentation. Can you say who you are speaking for with these ARPA?
The administration.
The administration. Okay, thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Appreciate your comments today. Thank you. Are there any town council updates? Hearing none. We do have one old business item on today's agenda, consideration of the Community Enrichment Grant Awards, which we've heard a bit about today. You might recall that this was continued last month due to the need for some additional legal interpretation that we kind of got into in the meeting and decided we probably should push that off. In the meantime, I believe Heather has had a chance to review the ordinance and some emails that were sent back and forth. I would definitely appreciate hearing from Heather on this at this time.
Yeah, I know that you all have looked at these in the past, and we've looked at this ordinance in the past. So just for the purposes of the town council and the public, Deputy Mayor Pickell noted this in his comments as well, but in 2005, the food and beverage tax authority was given to the town of Zionsville as part of the package that actually built Lucas Oil Stadium and expanded the Indiana Convention Center downtown. And as part of that package, it allowed each municipality in Marion County, as well as all of the donut counties, to raise an additional 1% tax from those individual patrons that would go to a food or beverage establishment here within the corporate limits. Those monies are then collected by the state and then sent back to the communities for the purposes under the statute. The statute actually states that money in the food and beverage fund shall be used by the county or municipality to reduce the municipality's property tax levy or for any legal or corporate purpose of the municipality, including the pledge of bonds, leases, or obligations. The state statute as it currently exists is broader than the uses under the Zionsville ordinance. And we are in the process of updating that. It has some old references in that ordinance as it exists today to things like the clerk treasurer, for example, that we're going to bring back before you. In the Zionsville Code of Ordinances, it only allows the town's food and beverage funds to be used for the creation and enhancement of any public facility or infrastructure improvement, or to fund initiatives intended to promote the town and its businesses for other purposes. So there's some question, I think, with that restrictive reading as to whether or not some of the proposed grantees would actually be eligible to receive funds. I know I talked with President Plunkett and Vice President Burke about waiting until the next meeting when we have more counselors present to consider whether or not you want to go back and amend that ordinance, change it to more closely align to the statute, and or just review these one by one to determine whether or not the uses are allowable. I know we've got historical evidence of the town funding similar requests that we have before us currently using the food and beverage tax funds. But I do think if we're looking at how the statute is worded, this has come up in the last round of grantees, and I think even the prior one. And we just want to make sure that what we're doing actually either meets the ordinance or that the ordinance itself is amended to further allow for these kinds of grantees. So no issue or concern, as I understand it, on any of the individual grantees, or that's not what I analyzed in terms of whether or not they're worthy of the funds. It's just really making sure that our ordinance allows for us to grant under the current scheme or come back and look at whether or not we want to amend that to make sure that we're meeting the requirements of the ordinance.
Is it your opinion then that the best course of action would probably be to take a look at amending the ordinance?
I think if you're going to consider these kinds of grants, that yes, I would. There is that sort of catch-all language at the end that says to promote, the business of the town. But some of these, because we look at individual organizations, and is it promoting, a business? Is it promoting a resource or a service, or there's a couple of them that are maybe limited to certain subsects of the town. Would that be, considered? So we can look at some other language, or we could come back and simply align it to the statute and put some language that says for any purpose, currently allowed by the statute, which then I think what's happened over time since 2005 and now is the state legislature has changed the requirements. And so as those have changed, we've also made a number of amendments, but they don't necessarily align one-to-one. So it would be, I think, my recommendation that you hold this meeting as we look, and maybe get some individual conversations with each of you to determine how you might want to change that, if you want to change it, and what the next step might be.
Yeah, this is a no-win situation because these are all good organizations that have gone through the process diligently and honestly. The process was flawed, and some may have self-selected out had the process followed the ordinance. So I'm okay with that plan, Heather, to have the full council weigh in. I hate to make these charities keep waiting on their money or keep coming to these meetings, but I also want to make sure that we've got, if we're going to make some changes to support them, that everyone's got buy-in for that.
And we can turn it around pretty quickly once we've had an opportunity. We already have a draft ordinance. We already have a revised ordinance drafted, so it's just making sure we've had an opportunity to talk with each of you as well as the members who aren't here today. So
I just have one comment on that. Moving forward, I think that I would really like to see, specific initiatives so the town can see the change when they receive the grant and then they get to see the money spent. So just throwing that out there, and we'll follow the ordinance. I think that's great. Sorry that it's going to take an extra step, but I think it'll be better for the next 4 years or the next 8 years of people coming, or these groups coming for these requests. It'll be more clear and understood. And I apologize for the length of time it's taking to get you funded, but thank you for coming to this meeting as well.
And a lot of focus in Deputy Mayor Pakel's earlier statements was around the community and enrichment grant process. That was strictly a process put in place by the mayor. All right, I won't speak for everybody, but it doesn't work. It has never worked the way that she structured it. That's the reason that we don't have an appointment on there. Historically, the way those requests for food and beverage fund dollars have worked is we are the approving body. Prior to this mayor, that's the way it worked. As far as do we treat everybody equally, we've never refused a nonprofit or anybody from coming to the town council to request dollars. So yes, have we treated everybody fairly? Yes, everybody's had an equal opportunity to ask for those dollars. The big reason that the committee that the mayor put together does not work is it's not educating the committee members on the requirements of the food and beverage dollars. So, unfortunately, we've got people that show up at this meeting that are expecting to get dollars that we can't give you by the way the food and beverage ordinance is written.
I want to echo, I appreciate everybody being here. I know this is requiring some patience and diligence to get through this process, but I completely trust Heather's feedback and opinion on this. And it sounds like we may have to look at the ordinance so that we can make sure that we can do this legally. And with 3 members absent today, I think it would be prudent to probably call for a motion to continue this until our next meeting, if that would be something someone would entertain.
I'll make a motion to continue.
We have a motion to continue by Councilor Garrett. You have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Trailer. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion to continue carries 4-0. New business, we have 7 items today. First off is an appointment to consider from Pizzazz, which is the People of Zionsville for the Aesthetics of Zionsville. As a member of that board, I would present this to you. I believe it's in your packet. Daniel Bradley has been nominated by the Pizzazz leadership. He has been in Zionsville for 29 years. He is a long-standing experience with lawn design, general maintenance. He holds a certificate in horticulture, and you will recall that Pizzazz's mission is to promote urban forestry and streetscapes and to focus on city designation of our Tree of the Year award, as well as educational programs around trees and plantings in Zionsville. I think he's got the appropriate background. I would encourage his appointment. Have a motion to approve Daniel Bradley to Pizzazz.
Second.
I guess I'll make the motion.
Oh, I thought you'd made the motion. I'm
No, no,
sorry.
That's fine. Yeah, I will. I'll make the motion to approve Daniel Bradley to be appointed to Pizzazz, second by Counselor Garrett. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Next is a consideration for a resolution establishing a crosswalk location in Zionsville along Limburger Drive and Von Terra. This is resolution 2023-20. Lance. Welcome to the mic.
Thank you and good morning. Excuse me. Haven't talked yet much on a Monday morning. We have a couple of agenda items that are related this morning. The first is a resolution. This was brought to me by Superintendent Logsdon of the Parks and Rec Department. As you all know, our Big Four rail trail is really, really awesome these days and stretches for miles and miles. And one of those miles down at the southern end goes through the Von Terra subdivision and connects to the soon to be operational parks facility down there, the trailhead. So our ordinance does require this body to establish mid-block crosswalk locations. So the first action is a resolution doing just that. And I had provided a couple of maps just to give some reference to people for the area. So that being said, I'll probably turn it over to you. I will remind you that there is a letter from the president of the HOA speaking on behalf of the community that supports this crosswalk. DPW thinks it's important. Obviously, that Big Four is going to carry a lot of pedestrians and trail users. So we would recommend that you take favorable action on this resolution this morning.
Any discussion or questions for Lance?
Any budget consideration with this? I mean, from what it seems, it's just really just painting lines. Are there more
No,
apparatus that?
this is quite accommodated within our existing sign budget.
Lance, I just had a question. You know, I'm a huge supporter of the Big Four rail trail, and I'm just curious. It's kind of been in the works for a long time. Is this not something that, like, when Von Terra was developed, that like the two things cross path, where we would have had the developer put something in like this?
At the time, the rail trail didn't connect to this point. When Von Terra was built, there was a small stub going north. So it's been a number of years before this pathway actually carried a lot of people from the north. And actually, when that subdivision went in, the developer did work very closely with the town to provide some pathway amenities. So, you know, a few $100s in signs, I think is quite a reasonable accommodation.
No, that's great. I love Von Terra and the overly Warman Park. So I understand there's a little bit more traffic there as well. So thank you.
Further questions? I'll call for a motion to consider a resolution establishing a crosswalk location at Limburger Drive in Von Terra.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion approved by Counselor Trailer, second by Counselor Garrett. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Lance, I think you're up again for the second one, which is consideration of an ordinance to amend the Town of Zionsville Traffic Code, ordinance 2023-22 on first reading.
Yeah, as part of the considerations and discussions with both the Parks Board and their trail crossing and the residents of Von Terra, it was decided or determined that a 30-foot no parking zone on either side of this crosswalk would be most appropriate to provide maximum visibility. So the next item on your agenda is an ordinance to do just that. The ordinance prohibits parking 24 hours a day, 30 feet in all directions, both sides of the road from that crosswalk. And this is an ordinance. So your action, if you are so inclined, would be to introduce upon first reading.
Any discussion? Craig?
I'll make a motion to introduce ordinance 2023-23 on first reading.
Second.
I'm sorry, it was 2023-22.
Motion by Counselor Garrett, second by Counselor Melton. All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Next up is a consideration of an ordinance adopting a road impact fee, ordinance 2023-2023. wait, 2023-23. First reading, Mike Dale. Is Mike here? Yeah. Oh, all right.
Sorry, I didn't see Mike come in. I did not mean to be presumptuous and stay here. You are welcome to the lectern.
You may have a hat trick.
It's a
this
fun
morning.
place.
Go ahead.
All right, very good. Thank you. This is the fourth and final step to update the road impact fee ordinance that the town has had in place and collected since 2007. This process has bounced back and forth between the plan commission and this body twice before, wherein each body approved the zone improvement plan as part of the comprehensive plan to the town of Zionsville. The next action is then consideration of an ordinance. The plan commission at their meeting just last week, a week ago today, conducted a hearing on the ordinance and forwards to you a favorable recommendation. So we had a lot of discussion about the zone improvement plan at the last weekend, the methodology and process for updating this. So I would be happy to just turn this over for questions at the time. But again, this is an ordinance, and your action today, if you are so inclined, is to introduce for first reading.
Any questions for Lance or the administration on this one?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Council Garrett. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Melton. All in favor of, I guess, introducing ordinance 2023-23 and say, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Next up is a consideration of an ordinance approving an ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act as amended. Turn it over to Council Garrett.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Vice President Burke. I'm a little dismayed by some of the characterizations that the deputy mayor made in his presentation, and I'm going to go through those here today with you. A little background on ARPA funding. These are federal dollars that came via COVID to the town and many local communities. We as a community have previously, this council has voted with the recommendation of the administration to give one-time bonuses to our employees who worked during COVID, during the lockdown, and could not work from home. And those dollars have been waiting for a use. So we got here basically through the budget process. This council appointed myself and Councilor Choi to work with the administration to figure out the budget. Once the first budget was proposed to us, and if you remember, that was a $12 million deficit, which was unacceptable to this council because it is unsustainable. Crow even agreed this was not a sustainable budget. And so we started going through together, cutting different items, but a lot of the items that would need to be cut further would pretty negatively, I think, impact the community. And so I proposed at one of our prior meetings that we would use these ARPA funding to take many of these items that were in the budget and move them to ARPA so that we could pass a balanced budget and still get many of the things that I think the community wanted. That was the plan. The administration pushed back, had asked for some type of deficit compromise agreement to that, which we agreed to, with the agreement that things would be moved into ARPA and we would complete this ARPA plan once the budget was passed. And if you remember, we have passed that budget. So the ARPA plan in front of you, Deputy Mayor Paquel talked about the funding in there, things like public works equipment purchases, some road improvements, town hall maintenance, the comprehensive plan, which is very important. These are things that without the ARPA funding may not have made the cut in the budget. So I'm very grateful that we have these ARPA dollars, that we have held on to these for, I won't call it a rainy day, but certainly it's misting outside. Included in there too are grants for nonprofits. I'm a little confused because on one hand, I'm being told or asked by the administration to remove these, but they say that they agree that these should support it or should be supported. But they remove them from the final budget presentation. So two of the three, Z-Works and the Chambers, were in the original budget by the administration, have always been in the budget. It wasn't until the final ARPA plan came through that they were removed. And part of my ARPA plan, part of these discussions was, rather than giving these organizations small dollar amounts that we've always supported every single year, why don't we give them a large dollar amount and let them find a path to sustainability and self-sufficiency? Now, if they blow these dollars in a bad way and come back to the town, further councils, further mayors can decide if that's worthy or not. But it's a chance here with one-time federal dollars to give these organizations a one-time opportunity to go forth and build their membership, build their donation base, build their sponsorships, and not have to keep coming back to the town, therefore freeing up those dollars for either other organizations or for other needs that we may have from a services standpoint. So if we pass this plan today, there'll still be about $2.4 million. These dollars have to be contracted by 2024 and have to be spent by 2026. So there is some time deadline to some of this stuff. I am going to go through a lot of the arguments that Deputy Mayor Pickell made here in a bit, but I would like the council to be okay. I've asked each of these three organizations who we have been supporting for years to come here and give a brief presentation to you and to the community to explain if we accept the administration's request to remove this funding and there is no other funding currently budgeted or appropriated, what is the impact to the organizations? And more importantly, what is the impact to the community for doing this at the administration request? So I've got Angela Church here, the chamber president. If you don't mind coming up and giving a few minutes here to what the impact would be to the chamber with this request.
Morning. I'm just going to read a letter that the executive board has prepared.
That'd be great.
Dear town council members, on behalf of the Zionsville Chamber of Commerce, we are writing to express our wholehearted support for the chamber to receive ARPA funding. The chamber's mission has always been centered around preserving Zionsville rich cultural heritage while nurturing its economic growth. However, without adequate funding, we face the imminent risk of reconsidering the execution of cherished traditions such as Brook Street Market, Zionsville Street Dance, and Christmas in the Village. These events not only hold deep-rooted significance in our community, but also play a pivotal role in generating substantial revenue for Zionsville businesses and elevating Central Indiana's awareness of Zionsville as a distinguished destination. Furthermore, the Chamber's strategic vision extends beyond preserving traditions. We are committed to enhancing Zionsville's role as a hub for economic development. Our aspirations go far beyond the conventional chamber activities. We aim to create a sustainable future by building awareness of Zionsville as a prime destination for businesses. To achieve this, we are developing innovative programs such as the Leadership Summit. This initiative aims to draw participation from key business and economic development leaders across Central Indiana, allowing them to experience firsthand Zionsville outstanding infrastructure, conducive work environment, executive resources, and unwavering community support. By showcasing our town's unique offerings, we aim to attract businesses looking to establish new work environments, invest in Creekside Corporate Park, or leverage collaborative spaces like Z-Works and Cohatch to foster new enterprises. The realization of our vision and the continuation of our impactful work necessitate funding that extends beyond the limitations of membership dues. The Chamber's endeavors reflect not only financial investments, but also a collective dedication to the growth and prosperity of Zionsville. We urge you to consider earnestly and provide the Zionsville Chamber of Commerce with essential funding. Your support is not just an investment in our organization, it is an investment in the future of Zionsville. Together, we can ensure that Zionsville remains a beacon of growth, innovation, and community spirit. Thank you for your attention to this critical matter. We are confident that with your support, the Zionsville Chamber of Commerce will continue to lead the way in shaping Zionsville's prosperous future. You have a copy of this in front of you as well.
Thanks so much, Angela. Appreciate it. Next, Candace Ulmer and Steve Mundy, one or both of you can come up and speak about the Zionsville Cultural District.
Good morning. Steve Mundy, a Zionsville resident. And it's been a little under 8 years since I was last here for a 7:30 a.m. meeting. So thank you for being here, enthusiastically doing your job. The Zionsville Cultural District had asked about funding from the town for the summer concert series. That concert series is 20 some years in duration. The Zionsville Cultural District was formed 10 years ago and took over the summer concert series and has done it for the last 10 years now. We have done that with support from businesses and individuals in the town. After COVID, that support has dwindled considerably. And in addition to that, the cost of the bands that we use for that series have gone up considerably. This past year, 2023 series is the second year that we've had it a full 3 months long, 2 months in Lions Park, 1 month in Lincoln Park, and we were at a deficit. And we have, as a 501c3 not-for-profit, we do not have deep reserves at all. This is a series that without some support from somewhere will go away. It is not sustainable as it is. We have worked at getting sponsorship, and we got a grant through the community enrichment grant process this past year for $5,000. And that still did not allow us to operate in the black. So it is something that you as a council heard from Candace about 3 months ago when she came and asked that you consider adding us as a line item to the food and beverage fund for $25,000 a year, which would support the concert series. So we're happy with the plan to use the ARPA money to do that, which would sustain us, I think, for the amount at least that was allowed for at least 4 years, and give us some additional time to look for ways to make this sustainable. I'll also say that the community enrichment grant process does not work well for this. The work for next year is underway right now, and we have to sew things up well before we might know about whether or not we would be granted something from the community enrichment grant process. So that has not worked for an item like this, which is perpetual year after year. And it is very common among all of our neighboring communities that they are supported by the town in some ways that they service. And lastly, I'll say that the reporting that is necessary is also, we have to report when we get a community enrichment grant process in that process. Now, we report that. We have found it to be very doable. So reporting the information that would be necessary to satisfy the federal requirements, I think, would not be an issue for any of these organizations. So with that, we certainly hope that you'll consider using it in this way. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out early, Steve. Appreciate it. And last, we've got Molly Hanlon from ZWorks.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for saying that you support ZWorks and all these organizations. We appreciate that. And I want to say thanks to the outstanding ZWorks Board of Directors who are all here this morning. So thank you for this opportunity, and a big thank you to all of you for your longtime support from the town and partnership with ZWorks. ZWorks started in 2015 and has a proven track record of contribution to the town's economic development growth. ZWorks successes are measurable, and the town's return on investment is great. Millions of dollars in startup companies, 200 plus employees brought to town, $350,000 in Main Street revenue provided by ZWorks members and visitors who visit, shop, work, and eat here. About 100 current members who come to work at 75 East Pine Street, which is a great point of connectivity for the town. With the ARPA money, we will continue to strengthen the tax base by attracting, growing, and graduating startups and businesses in Zionsville. We will expand programming and other initiatives that support entrepreneurs, and we will grow the membership community who support one another's ideas and invest in each other's businesses. We will also work to become self-sustaining and won't come back here each year asking for additional funding. ZWorks' contribution to economic development in town aligns with the ARPA distribution requirements, and we will continue to tangibly support entrepreneurs, startups, and new businesses and benefit as many of these and residents as possible. Our mission is to keep costs down for entrepreneurs and also provide a desirable co-working space in which members want to work. As Steve Mundy just said, we will also thoroughly fulfill any federal or local reporting requirements, compliance reports,
just as we have always provided documentation and follow-up on any grants in the past, and will continue regular communication with and reporting to the town. It's an exciting time for Indiana, Boone County, and Zionsville, and ZWorks will work hard and continue to be an economic connector in the area. We look forward to continuing a strong partnership with the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Appreciate everyone coming out. So you can see the clear importance of these organizations, and also they have been long supported by this community and in this town of Zionsville, the government. A few points I want to break through in terms of what Deputy Pickell presented here. First was this lack of transparency or how were these selected? There's sort of an implication there that these are like counselor pet projects that came out of nowhere. I think all of us are on various charitable boards, and some charitable organization that came out of nowhere that was suddenly we're going to get a grant for $200,000 from the town. I think I would look a little sideways at something like that. But as I mentioned earlier, 2 of the 3 of these were originally in the mayor's budget. She was proposing to support them and since took them out. They're also not shy about highlighting the many great things these bring to our community on their own social media. So August 5th, they highlighted the street dance. November 19th, 2022, highlighted Christmas in the Village. We should be highlighting these things. These are great things for Zionsville, but clearly these are not council initiatives. These are community initiatives. Our agreement was to take funds, mutually take funds from the budget and put them into ARPA. And that's exactly what we're doing. So I'm pretty disappointed that there's a sudden different narrative of what's going on here. The Zionsville Cultural District has been supported for the town for a long time. As Steve mentioned, that we requested money 3 months ago. There's a picture on the town's Facebook feed of the mayor handing them a check in 2022. So again, these are not pet projects. There was a point out there about counselor affiliation, as if, again, this is some sort of counselor pet project. I am unaware of any counselor that has any board role on any of these organizations. There is one individual in ZWorks who is currently running for town council. She is not on the current town council. She has not been involved in any of this process. This is very open in terms of how we are doing this. Reporting, as we mentioned, this is the same reporting burden that these organizations have had with money they've got in the past. In his presentation, Deputy Mayor Pickell mentioned the reporting burden to the town. If that's the key driver here, if they are saying they support these organizations and it is a reporting burden, it's an easy fix. We could have just taken this money out of the budget and we could have taken something out of the ARPA and moved into ARPA and put this into the budget. It's really the same dollars, but this was not the path we agreed to go down. In terms of how these dollars were selected, this was a recommendation I made based on, as I said earlier, how can we get these organizations to self-sufficiency? How do we take one-time costs, not recurring costs, and prevent future burden? And burden is the wrong word for these organizations, but future asks from them. And this seemed like roughly 3.5 times of their annualized revenue that they're getting from the town. That seemed like a good number to let them go and figure out their own way. Deputy Mayor Pickell mentioned why we should go through the community enrichment grant process. I think Councilor Traylor did a good job of explaining why that doesn't work. We had to postpone once again that process because it does not seem sustainable. It is not acting within the ordinance. So I don't see why we would give an process that's not working additional funds. And also you can't transfer funds, ARPA funds, into a fund. You have to have a designation for them. So, I think we've heard about some of the impacts of the community. I mean, I'm disappointed that this is the stance of the administration, that they want to cut out these organizations. These are some of my last few meetings on the council, right? And you start thinking about legacy, and not to get too sobby about it, but I don't want my legacy going out to being, I'm on a council that canceled the summer concert series, the Brick Street Market, the street dance. It killed the startup community in Zionsville. Those are the things that make Zionsville a special place to live. And this just seems like a no-brainer to spend these dollars on. So again, I don't understand the pushback. I would hope you will support me in voting for this today. I hope the mayor will support us in signing this, because most of this funding in here is things that were requested by her and her department heads that we have agreed to get them funded. We still have $2.4 million left that I'm hoping we can spend before the end of the year. And I'm looking and have asked for feedback from department heads. I've asked for feedback from administration, from counselors. What I don't think we want to do as a council is say, well, let's just give $2.4 million to trails. I think that's a great idea, but if Lance or if Jared can't take that money and reasonably contract it in a year's period per the ARPA rules, then that is money that we lose. So by getting feedback from all the different department heads of how can you spend this money, how can we further get new one-time initiatives, that's, I think, the dialogue I'm hoping to have through the rest of the year. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm happy to answer your questions, counselors, you may have about all of that, but I feel very confident that this is a good plan for the community, which is the most important thing.
Councilor Garrett, you would then confirm that these organizations were not funded at all in the 2024 budget that we
I
passed.
did confirm that with the finance department. Yes.
Okay. I know we spent a good deal of discussion today on the nonprofits. There's a lot of other stuff in here. Could you give us just a quick sum of the dollars that would be spent in this particular ask, and maybe highlight a couple of things that you're proud of that are in here?
I can, if you, let me find the exact details here.
14.
Here we go. Thank you. So it's about so it's about, let me do the dollar amounts
I
here.
know, kind of dropped that on you.
It's a long ordinance here. So, all right, we've got, so there is, I mentioned, there's public works equipment purchases. So, and again, these are coming from department heads, administration, things that we've needed in a while, dump trucks, plows, salt trucks, administration vehicles, things like that. We've got funding for road projects that have long been planned. And again, these are things that came into the budget but wouldn't have made the cut otherwise. Town hall maintenance that is needed. The transportation study, this is something that Mr. Lance has asked for a long time to make sure that we are planning for the future and not reacting to today. Deputy Mayor Patel mentioned the SCBA, this is the self-contained breathing apparatus. These are needing to be replaced for our fire department. The comprehensive plan is a big one, and that's something that has been asked for by the planning department to look at us as a community and how do we want to grow and where do we want to grow and what do we want that growth to look like. And then we mentioned the before mentioned. Oh, and then one thing too is the chambers also, in addition to the $200,000, they have been vocal advocates for a downtown restroom. How do we support our visitors and residents down there? And so we're not asking them to fix it, but we are asking them to come to the future council with some suggestions on what might be the best path forward for that. So all good things, all things I support, all things I think that are needed. There is not fluff in here. This is good stuff.
And these were all also items that were initially in the 2024 budget proposal that were then moved to be put into ARPA. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, and I think that's a good point because there are additional things I think that we want to do as a community that didn't make the budget cut. So for example, I know one of the things that you've been advocating for is pedestrian access on the east side of Michigan. Being able to create a plan for that so that when funding is provided, whether through a developer and a TIF or whether through the town or whether through a grant, that is ready to go. I think those are the things that as you think about the remaining dollars, one of the reasons it was okay to go into a budget deficit for remaining dollars in ARPA is to allow us time to have that conversation so that we can make sure that we are proposing things that we see, that the administration sees as needs in the community and that the department heads feel comfortable taking on and being able to contract those within the next 14 months.
Thank you. I think that's a good clarification. Any other questions or comments from the council? This would be a first reading. So a call for a motion to introduce this on first reading, ordinance 2023-24.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion introduced by Councilor Garrett, second by Councilor Trailer. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Next is a consideration of an ordinance establishing the 2024 budget for non-DLGF funds, ordinance 2023-25 on first reading. Cindy Poor. Cindy still here? Hi, Cindy.
Hi. So you have before you the 2023-25 ordinance for the non-DLGF funds. The exhibits reflect what the estimated revenues for these funds are. And then that's Exhibit A. And then Exhibit B would be the expenses that are being budgeted.
Any discussion or questions for Cindy?
So Cindy, if I'm looking at the coronavirus local fiscal fund, Fund 176,
Mhm.
that has the dollar amounts that we approved less the dollar amounts for the 3 entities that the administration asked us to remove. Do those need to be added in, or what is the process for that so they are not orphaned even with approval?
Yes, if they're going to be going through the budget, then yes, they will need to be added.
Do we need to amend any sort of approval, Heather, to go through that? Is that the best thing to do that, or?
Since you're introducing this on first reading, I would recommend that you amend the ordinance on first reading to include the 3 items you just discussed. So Z-Works, the chamber, and then the art series, cultural district.
And then Cindy, what department would you consider those 3 spends under? Would that be non-departmental?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions, comments? Sounds like there needs to be an amended motion to introduce this.
I think I can make
Josh,
that.
Can you make?
Yeah, I can make that motion.
Please do.
So I'll make a motion to introduce in first reading ordinance 2023-25, consideration of an ordinance establishing the 2024 budget for non-DLGF funds with the following 3 changes. The addition of $200,000 in Fund 176 Coronavirus Local Fiscal Rec in non-departmental. The addition of $200,000 for Z-Works in Fund 176 Coronavirus Local Fiscal Rec under non-departmental. The addition of $100,000 for the Zionsville Cultural District under Coronavirus Fund 176 Coronavirus Local Fiscal Rec non-departmental. And I don't know if this needs to be separate. The addition of $10,000 also to the chamber for purposes of a downtown bathroom study in Fund 176 Coronavirus Local Fiscal Rec non-departmental for a total addition of $510,000. Please don't make me do that again.
Heather, does that sound acceptable? Okay. We got a motion by Councilor Garrett, second by Councilor Melton. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Next up, consideration of a resolution approving execution of a master government lease agreement for leaf collection truck. That's also Cindy.
This lease is through the Indiana Bond Bank Help Program, which is a lease program that they provide to municipalities in order to be able to obtain equipment, et cetera. This is for a leaf vac for the DPW. And one of the requirements through the bank is that we just bring this resolution before the council, which gives them basically the comfort level that it will be, but the payments will be budgeted for. It's going to be 4 annual payments.
Cindy, did you say there was a grant for this?
No, it's a lease.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said grant. I heard the
No.
word grant somewhere.
Through the Indiana Bond Bank. It's a help program. It's a lease program.
Okay. Any questions or discussion on this one? Any questions for Cindy? Nope. All right. Do we have a motion?
To make a motion to approve resolution 2023-21 for consideration of approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Counselor Melton, seconded by Counselor Garrett. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
We're down to the end. Other matters. Anything we've,
If none, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn by Counselor Garrett. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Trailer. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0 to adjourn. Next regular town council meeting is scheduled for Monday, November 6th, 2023 at 7:00 PM in the Zionsville Town Hall chambers. Public notice will be posted in compliance with the Indiana open door law. Thank you.